In Ontario, a roommate is typically considered someone who shares a rental unit with another person or group of people. Roommates may share the rent and other living expenses or pay a set rate. How the housing situation is structured makes the difference on whether or not the Residential Tenancies Act comes into play. Types of roommates. Co-tenant. If all roommates have signed the lease agreement with the landlord, they are considered co-tenants. Co-tenants have equal rights and responsibilities under the lease. They are jointly responsible for the entire rent and for adhering to the terms of the lease. Occupant or subtenant. If one person is the primary tenant, for example, the one who signed the lease, and rents out part of the unit to another person, i.e., the roommate is typically considered an occupant or a subtenant of that primary tenant. The primary tenant is responsible for the full rent to the landlord and acts as a sort of landlord to that subtenant. The subtenant is considered a roommate, and, in most cases, the RTA will not apply if the occupants are required to share a bathroom or kitchen facility. Living with the landlord. The RTA has provided an exemption for any roommate situation in Section 5 of the RTA, whereby the living accommodations whose occupant or occupants are required to share a bathroom or a kitchen facility with the owner's spouse, child, or parent, or the spouse's child or parent, and where the owner, spouse, child, or parent lives in the building in which the living accommodation is located. I know, that's a mouthful. This isn't a get out of the RTA free clause. In order for this clause to apply, the landlord or immediate family member must live in the home on a full-time basis. It must be their primary address and not simply a temporary location that they stay at sometimes or just keep a locked bedroom. The Landlord-Tenant Board is unlikely to be kind to landlords that try to abuse the roommate clause for the purposes of skirting the RTA. Coverage under the Residential Tenancy Act. Co-tenants. Co-tenants who are all on the lease are fully covered by the Residential Tenancies Act. This means they have protections such as those related to eviction, rent increases, and maintenance issues. Occupants or subtenants may or may not be directly covered by the RTA in the same way as co-tenants. Their rights and responsibilities are often defined by the agreement with the primary tenant rather than the landlord directly. However, certain provisions of the RTA may still apply, especially regarding eviction and maintenance. Protecting yourself. If you are truly providing housing as a roommate, it is important that you use a roommate agreement and not the Ontario Standard Lease. The roommate should be called just that, and not a tenant in the roommate agreement. And the owner or primary tenant is not the landlord. Call yourself what you are. Are you the homeowner or are you the primary tenant? Ensure your roommate agreement is clear with the start date, house rules such as smoking, overnight guests, parking, pets, etc. Include when payment for the room is due. Also include a termination clause for both parties. How much notice is the roommate responsible to give to you and you to them? Ensure there is a breach of terms clause in the roommate agreement that the homeowner or primary tenant can use for any breach of terms, such as parking on the grass if that isn't permitted, or failing to pay for the room. I suggest a termination clause for breach of terms not exceed 7 days. Imagine having to put up with someone smoking in your living room, if that's not permitted, for a month or longer because you forgot a breach of terms clause. While co-tenants are fully covered by the RTA, occupants or subtenants may not be, depending on the specifics of their arrangement. It's important for both sides of the roommate agreement to understand the nature of their agreement and to know their rights and responsibilities.